Hi, I'm Randy Hollenbeck, and this is the Music Roundtable. Today on the show, we have guitarist Erik Ferentinos from Stephen Pearcy's band.
Hello, hello. How you doing, Randy?
I can't take it. I can't take it. Wasting my time. I'm gonna
I wanted to get into some of your history, how you started with guitar and what age.
Okay. Well, I got my first guitar at age 15 when I got my first job, minimum wage job. I worked for like 6 months and then bought a guitar. And yeah, I got a little bit of a late start there. Didn't really take any formal lessons. I had a couple friends in the neighborhood that we would try to figure out songs together. There was in the late 1980s, there was the Guitar for the Practicing Musician magazine, and we would try to figure out whatever songs it offered that month, and just kept on it. I just always believed that it would happen for me someday, and just never gave up, and finally figured out how to play that thing.
Can you tell me some of your musical influences on guitar?
Early on, I would probably go with people like Angus Young and Eddie Van Halen. But even my parents had great albums that I enjoyed music from. Jimi Hendrix, uh, also what was some other good stuff that they had? The Doors, um, Eagles, all that. So they had all the good '70s. The Rolling Stones. So my ears were hearing all that stuff, and then by the time the '80s rolled around and MTV became so popular, uh, I moved into the angsty, heavy metal stuff. I loved Metallica. Metallica was awesome to learn guitar too. It was like fun riffs to learn how to play. So that kept me like interested in it. And so if you're playing a Metallica song, you don't really even need a singer or a band. It sounds awesome just you playing by yourself. You play Randy, right? You play guitar?
Oh yes, and yeah, I agree with you on the Metallica. Yeah, like even the guitar solos were interesting to learn. They were hummable and stuff like that.
That's right. Melodic. Yeah. I mean, there was of course, phenomenal guitar players back then. Steve Vai comes to mind. But when you're like a 15-year-old kid, that's pretty average by most people's uh, idea of you. You're not going to play like Steve Vai. You're and Metallica was like actually achievable thing you could do on guitar at the time. Yeah, and I loved Van Halen so much, but even like it seemed impossible to even play that. I had learned "Ain't Talking About Love." That was like probably one of the only songs I could play back then. When I first started out, I could probably play that stuff now, probably if I wanted to, but it would take me a long time. I think that's why I respect some of those guys so much, is for how young a lot of the guitar heroes were from the '80s when they were doing it. They were only like anywhere, Warren DeMartini, I think, was 18 years old when he joined Rat, which is amazing. I didn't know how to do too much at age 18. Plus, by then it was the '90s, so guitar solos weren't even that popular anymore.
Can you tell me how you first met Steven?
He moved in across the street from my family in Carlsbad, which is North County, San Diego. And it was just a weird thing, right? Pretty much the same year that I had started playing guitar. And I remember my mom had said to me, "Hey, have you ever heard of the band Rat?" And I was like, "Well, of course I have," because at this point, Dancing Undercover was out, and they were all over MTV, and everybody knew Rat. They were on the radio all the time. And she's like, "Well, don't tell anybody, but he just moved in across the street, the singer." And I was like, "What?" And like right at that moment, I knew that this was going to be a life changing thing for me, even though I had no idea where this would go or if I technically was ever going to even meet the guy. But I would just watch out my window to see any glimpse of him. I mean, he toured a lot back then, so he was only home for like brief periods. But when he was, I would see him, walking his dog or what have you, and I would bust my amp out and start doing dive bombs and making a bunch of noise. He would be looking around like, "Where's that coming from?" And he would look. And what else I do? I think I first washed his car. I think I mowed his lawn. I mean, I was a young teenager, so he was like, "Hey, you want to wash my car?" Whatever. I was like, "Sure." He gave me $100. I'm all right on. Um, but then he would hear me playing with my band in the garage, and we were playing like Metallica stuff. No, I think at the time though, I started doing some original stuff, and he heard us playing, and he wanted to like produce my band. Basically, he would actually let have me come over, and he had a small studio in his house, and he would record some demos. He actually had Chris Hager, who's played in our band throughout the years. He was there. I remember he was in Rough Cut at the time, and he was actually engineering the sessions, the demos that Steven was doing for us over there. So he's known me a long time too. Uh, and yeah, that was pretty much how we first met. And then Rat kind of disbanded by 1991, and he was doing Arcade, and my band opened some shows for Arcade, which was cool. And he even used some lyrics from that. The band I was in at the time was called Voodoo, and we were popular here in San Diego. And I was in that band from like the time I was 17 to probably like 24 or something like that. We would win, San Diego Music Awards, and I think there's a video of ours on YouTube people can look up. There's a song called Skeleton that there's a video for, and that's like an early '90s thing. But it was pretty awesome for a local band. We were really good. This was like before Pro Tools or anything like that. So we actually went into an analog studio and made a record. And the radio station at the time in the early '90s was Rock 102.1 here, and they were a P1 station, and they put several of our songs into regular rotation for a good 5, 8 years, something like that. Then the station turned into Rock 105.3, which is what it is today. And yeah, we had pretty much broken up around that point. And I was just doing different side little projects locally. I had was kind of bummed that my first band broke up, because just like a first girlfriend, you love your first band the most, right? And then I didn't know if my career was going to be over, because at this point I was getting into my later 20s. But Steven always, like, even without the internet, he always remembered me and would check on me and see what I was up to. And in about the year 2000, he had said he was putting a new solo band together, and he asked me to play. And at that time, I was playing with a heavy band in San Diego called 13A, and those guys were in a band called Asphalt Ballet. I don't know if you ever heard them. They were on MTV for a second, but it was some of those guys, popular San Diego band that was on Virgin Records at the time. And that when they were off their label. They put kind of a super heavy band together there in the late '90s, and that's who I was playing with, and I was kind of loyal to them at the time. I didn't know what Steven was even gonna do as far as a tour. I was honestly, I always overthink things anyway, and I was just like, man, I don't want to get left out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know. It just sounded like dangerous. I'd never really left San Diego, and so long story short, I had turned him down. And he went out with another band, and he was calling it Nitronic. That was one of the things. Like he said, I'm going to put this band together. It's called Nitronic, and I'm like, how's anybody going to know it's you? Is anybody going to come to this? And anyways, the guitarist that he had in the year 2001 wasn't working out. He was on a tour, and he called me up, and he was like, "Hey, I need you out here. I need you out here tomorrow." And I was like, "What?" And I think he gave me like about a week. I had about a week to learn the songs, and next thing you know, I was like on a flight to Chicago to meet up with these guys. And at this point, I guess there was all this legal stuff going on with Rat. um, they had gotten Jizzy Pearl and went out and were doing. They were calling themselves Rat, and Steven had the attitude like, well, if they can call that Rat, then I could call something Rat. There'll be two Rats out there, and at this point, he was calling it Rat with a little caveat. It was Rat featuring Stephen Pearcy, and he kind of had that as the name of the band, thinking, well, it's not Rat, it's Rat featuring Stephen Pearcy, so it's different. It's legally a little different or whatever. But it was probably not great legal advice or whatever at the time. But all I know is I was on a tour bus, like $1 million Prevost bus. And I'm with him and Frankie and Troy and Todd, these two Nebraska dudes, really great musicians. And it was amazing. I was like, oh my god, I'm on tour. It was like a dream come true. We were playing these rap songs. The crowd was a little. They didn't know what to think of me back then in the beginning, to be honest. But I didn't care. I was having the time of my life, and I would just like kind of overcompensate a little bit. I would try to be extra crazy on stage and stuff to try to make up for the fact I didn't really know the songs all that great. I don't know, part of memory there, but anyways, the legal stuff pursued after that. Like Stephen ended up right around the time Robin Crosby passed away. Uh, Stephen lost the battle in court for the name, and he had to just be Stephen Pearcy, formerly of Rat. And Rat couldn't be. It got all these little stipulations like if it was advertised in a magazine or in a paper that we were playing, the Rat couldn't be the actual logo, and it had to be smaller than Stephen Pearcy and all this stuff. And it was those were kind of darker times. Like the early 2000s were not easy times necessarily. Like there was a lot of stuff going on back then. The DC sniper was like randomly shooting people. Great White had that terrible tragedy where all those people. So people were almost avoiding those kind of shows for a little while or just avoiding going out. And it was like, I just remember it being tough. It was like, it wasn't until probably like 2005 or six that people started going to shows again. And we started doing bigger tours. I remember 2005, we did a tour with Wasp and LA Guns, which was probably the biggest thing I had done up until that point. And that was amazing, like because when you're on like a full blown tour, you just get the band gets so good, and you're that much more comfortable on stage than you are when you don't play for 4 months and then to have a fly out somewhere. It's always like, how's this go again? But you're just on full autopilot when you're on a tour, especially when it's some kind of package thing where the crowds are great every night and you're playing big stages. So I enjoyed that. I always played every show like it was my last and partied like it was going to be my last day. Um, and the years marched on. There were times where Steven got back with Rat. They had some reunions that they did, like 2007. He went back with them for a couple years. We weren't playing all that much with the solo band. A couple other times as well. People are now familiar with all the Rat drama with different changes, and of course, Bobby Blotzer's version of Rat that we had to deal with back then. But I guess the latest you'd say incarnation was Stephen and Juan ended up winning the lawsuit. They had the final uh, win against Blotzer or something like that, and now I guess own the name 50/50. However, they've had their own little bit of drama going on, and so Steven has decided for this year anyway. Now that things are opening back up, that he's just going to go solo. I mean, he said that he wasn't going to do Rat again unless it was all the original guys, as far as I know. But that can always change. You never know what circumstances may come up. But we're super excited to finally be out playing again. We've been doing some big gigs. We just played an arena in Connecticut with where Slaughter and Quiet Riot were actually opening for us, which was mind blowing to me. I'm like, what? Quiet Riot opening up for me? Like, there's like my mom's got a video somewhere where I'm like, I got a tennis racket and I'm like air bands to like Quiet Riot, and these things. So pretty amazing, and I think things are going to continue to be good this year. Anyway, I see some cool things that we're going to be doing. Our next gig, I want to say it's April 30th. Maybe it's the for the Rainbow Bar and Grill, which if you're familiar with Hollywood, this is on the Sunset Strip, right by the Whiskey. The Rainbow's a famous bar restaurant that's been there forever, and that's the place. That was always the place to go. Was the Bow, if you partied and hung out there in the rock scene and what have you. And they're having their 50th birthday. That place is about as old as I am, and we're gonna play this. It's they've done this for several years in a row, but they basically just open up the parking lot and then have like about five national acts or more play at this thing. And I know this year it's going to be Steel Panther, and then we'll open up for them. There's Orgy is playing, that band that God, I'm forgetting it now. It's like a early 2000s band. I'll remember later. But there's some other good bands on there as well. But that'll be the next thing that we do. We have M3 this year. There's also different festivals throughout the country that we're on, and they're still adding shows now. So I'm stoked about it. Well, that covers 20 years.
I want to talk about a couple of your songs. You released Night Flight in November 2021. Can you tell me about that song? It's basically like an instrumental guitar track.
Or let me say, late 2019, I had sent Steven some song ideas like I normally do. And when I send him ideas, pretty much done. And like that song, for example, all the music that you hear, I had just done here at home. And that would be a typical demo for me to send to him. And then I got a gig with the band Bow Wow Wow, which was a weird circumstance, but I ended up in 20 going on tour with them and the band The Motels. And it was like a Live Nation, totally 80s tour. And at that time, Steven was antsy to like put out something. And unfortunately, I wasn't even in town to like redo that Night Flight idea or whatever. So he just said, screw it. He like just took the track into Matt's and then just sang over it and just put it out not so much like, hey, for it was put out for free. It wasn't on an album that people had to pay for or anything like that. We also, but with that song, I don't know. That was pretty much it. That's my recollection. How it came out. It was just kind of not a fluke, but just a one off. There was another one, kind of a, I don't want to say power ballad, but a poppy song called "All That I Want" was another one that he did the same thing, where I had recorded the music here, and then he went into Matt Thorne, who was also in Rough Cut, his studio in Burbank, MT Studios, and he just used my track and sang over it. Some of these songs we're considering like actually doing a better version of, like on the next solo record, because they were kind of cool tunes. They just, the production wasn't that super amazing or anything. Um, One thing that had a better production was he wanted to do a Duran Duran cover. Did you hear that at all?
Girls on Film?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that one I was getting like a little better with like tracking stuff, and I had got a good amount of that recorded here, and then Matt again picked up the slack. He recorded the bass and added a couple little things on the production, and that actually came out pretty good. Um, but that song was kind of, that had the original Duran Duran song had electronic drums on it, so it was kind of easier to, with 2010, 2020 technology, to recreate that pretty easily. um, it's doing real rock drums that gets a little more tedious, where you have to actually have a guy come in some cases to do it. uh, Usually, the last record we had Scott Coogan, who's been our drummer, who he was from LA. He's played with LA Guns and Ace Frehley, and he did a great job on the last Pearcy record, View to a Thrill. He did all his drums in like 2 days. I had, again, I do the songs at home as far as writing them, and he just has to kind of replace the beats I did, add a little panache, you know, here and there. But yeah, he had knocked that out fairly quick, because on today's budgets, you don't have the luxury of spending months in the studio like they did back in the.
Yep. Can you tell me how you came up with you got a song called "I Can't Take It." How'd you come up with there's like a little picking part in there right before the verse that comes in. Can you tell me how you came up with that idea?
Well, to give credit where credit's due, that the riff was actually from a guy named Michael Raphael, who was in a band called Jailhouse back in the day. I also met him when we did a thing with Janie Lane, where he was playing acoustic guitar on this acoustic tour for Janie. But at some point, he and Steven had a little session or something, and there was some crude tape of that, which it wasn't really like a riff I would generally write. It was almost like a 38 special riff. Like I wouldn't typically do that, but Steven for some reason thought I gave him the he thought I gave him the song, but I didn't. I go, that's not me playing guitar there, and he's like, it's got to be you, and I'm like, it's not. But what we did was we took the idea, and I just kind of spiffed it up. You know what I mean? I just kind of gave it my flavor on it, so to speak. I added some of the stuff on top, helped with some of the lyrics and melody. Here, not a lot of it, just like probably 10% of that aspect. But then the album came out, and then all of a sudden we got a call from Mike Raphael's like, "Hey, that's my song," what have you. So he actually gets some credit on that. You know what I mean? Like I the two Piercy albums, I probably wrote 95% of the stuff, but there's one song on each album that, or no, on Smash there's those two songs. Excuse me. On Smash, there's that song that Michael Raphael's credited with as well as a co-writer, and the opening track on Smash is a Chris Hager situation where he had given Steven something, and then I went and did the guitars and kind of spiffed it up again, or what have you. But generally speaking, Steven and I write everything on the solo records, with the exception of those two songs.
What's your favorite Rat song to play live?
I would say, for the longest time, it was probably "Lay It Down." Um, that because there's a couple songs they do that get a great crowd reaction, and if they're having a great time, then I'm happy to do it. Round and Round's fun to play too. I'd say, yeah, Lay It Down and Round and Round are probably the two, just because the excitement you get from the crowd. I think it's like happy moments of the show where, they were waiting to hear those, or what have you. And of course they're challenging enough on guitar, but I could play those. It's been enough years that I could play those perfect for the most, as far as I could tell. So yeah, I'm going to go with Lay It Down.
What do you guys got planned for 2022?
Well, Steven's going to put out a compilation record that kind of encompasses his life, I forgot what he was going to call that, but that's going to have tracks going back from the beginning of his career to more recent demos and so forth, like an anthology of sorts. And then there'll be the sixth solo record will come out, which I think he's going to call it Agent Provocateur. I believe that might change, but he did make some kind of announcement like that. So apparently that's what it's going to be called. I've given him, at least 25 songs already, and I'm going to continue to give him some more. So we do have a lot of good material to choose from. He and I don't typically work on the vocal stuff ahead of time. He has his ideas, and then we just kind of converge in the studio. And the pressure of having to do it there on the spot, it works for us for some reason, and we end up giving what you get, on those works. Sometimes when you have too much time, it doesn't come to you. But under pressure, if it's do or die, you prevail, and that's probably how we're going to do this record as well. We'll just converge in, which hopefully back at Matt's, Steve will come out to Hollywood. He moved to Vegas, which was a change. I know he's trying to get some kind of residency in Vegas at one of the hotels. It wouldn't be, it would be a short term deal, but where we would be doing multiple shows. And he was talking about recreating the Sunset Strip and doing something cool there. So he had told me that should be in May. But as far as as far as I know, what's scheduled is just a bunch of shows. He's just adding shows. I mean, just like the rest of the planet, we were grounded from playing for like 2 years. That was, for the fans, it was the worst time. For the bands, it was highly not lucrative, and it sucked for us too. It was depressing, and the only thing about it was we were all sharing that horribleness together. There wasn't like only some of us could play and some of us couldn't. It was like nobody was playing, and now we are, and we're super stoked. I'm just like adding dates on my calendars as they come in, but they all seem like pretty good shows. The ones that are getting booked now are mostly like amphitheaters and stuff like that, with like festival-y type stuff.
Now, where can we get a hold of you? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
I do have a Twitter, but I always hated Twitter. I thought that was the dumbest thing, and I got it, but I think the last time I posted something on there was probably over a decade ago. And I'm going to show my age. I just do Facebook, at this point. I should probably do an Instagram, but it bugs me that they're the same owners. It's just literally the same, owned by the same company. So whatever. I'll probably do that. But for now, Facebook / Erik Ferentinos. If they go there, they can send me an ad or follow me on there would be great too. And I do, I stay away from posting, my personal views on stuff. I just, if you come to my page, it's just going to be music, on there. It's just going to be what I'm up to with Pearcy, and then sharing old memories and stuff on there. in my timeline, but they're absolutely welcome to go over there and send me an ad or a follow on there. I'd always appreciate it.
That's all the questions I have. Thanks for coming on the show today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, thank you, Randy, for having me on. Sorry about the trouble there in the beginning. Um, Also, for the latest dates, your people should go check out Stephen Pearcy Official, I believe, is his website, and he has a tour section in there where he keeps the dates pretty uh, up to date on there. But yeah, that's it, man. Thanks for having me on.